the teachings that we share today are based on Paramahansa Yoganandaji's teachings on healing, meditation, and we will see towards the end of the class the tools, the techniques, the tips that Yoganandaji shares are of a very high order, at the same time, very profound and easily accessible for all of us. We can all do it wherever we are. And not only practice healing and sharing these teachings on ourselves, but also to people in distant places, even to those who may have passed on. So, before I begin, I want to share this little story this is from the book Autobiography of a Yogi. And Yogananda ji, when he was a small child, he was stricken with Asiatic cholera. And we know in those times, in the early 20th century, it was a dreaded disease which had no cure. And he was on deathbed. His parents were anxious, and his parents were disciples of Lahiri Mahashaya. And out of desperation, his mother prayed to a picture of Lahiri Mahashaya that hung on the wall. And Yoganandaji was so weak, and as a child he was called Mukunda. He was so weak that he could not get up and sit on the bed. And his mother told him, just look at the picture of Lahiri Mahashaya and inwardly bow to him. And Yoganandaji did that, and he instantly felt a flash of light from that picture upon him, and he was instantly healed. And the reason I start with this story, friends, is because this is the basis of the teachings of healing that we are going to try and understand today. The light of God. We understand healing in our everyday life, through medicines. We are familiar with the prescriptions of doctors. And again, as the masters say, these are all very potent forms, and there are many more modalities and approaches in healing, all of them effective in their own special way. And this system of healing, likewise, is called divine will healing. And we will see in a very short while why it is called divine will healing. But as I shared in the story, the very basis and foundational principle of this system of healing that we are going to see today is the light of God. That where the light of God is, there no darkness can be. No darkness of disease, no darkness of ill health. What we need to learn to do is to learn to switch on that light. And that light is not out there somewhere, it is right there within us. And one of the definitions Yoganandaji shares about healing, he said, it is a rousing of the life force within us, which has become inactive in that particular diseased part of the body. But before we get into all that, let me start with some of the basic precepts of these healing teachings. What is divine will healing, and why is it called so? Yoganandaji shares about creation, how we came to be in this world, how this world came to be. So first, it's good for us to get a perspective on why do we suffer? Why does disease exist in this world? We all have this basic understanding that this is a world of duality. There is night, there is day, there is joy, there is sorrow, there is good health, there is disease. Is there a way out of this duality? Now, this universe, this creation functions on that law, the law of opposites. So materially, we cannot escape that law, but in our consciousness, we can rise above it. Now, how does this come to be? Yoganandaji said this creation came into being as a desireless desire of God to enjoy himself through many. The scriptures define God as Satchit Anand, ever conscious, ever existing, ever new bliss. And we all have that experience in our own lives that when we are happy, we want to share that happiness with somebody else. And it is when we share with more people that we feel even more complete and even more joyful in that state of happiness. So likewise, it's the nature of bliss to want to share itself through the many. And so that's how creation came into being. So from a point, as the Gita calls the darkless dark and the lightless light, where there was no creation, from that point, God begins to vibrate a portion of his consciousness into creation. Now, this is a very important part that I want us to pay attention to, that God vibrates a portion of his consciousness, which means this creation is not outside of God. You and me and everything in creation is in God. It is rooted and anchored in God. And so, if we ask ourselves, who am I? We begin with mundane definitions. We begin with our name. Oh, I am this, I'm A, I'm B, I'm C. I'm a teacher, I'm a scientist, I'm an artist, I'm a doctor. We have a bundle of self definitions which have their role in this world, in this plane. They help us relate to one another, they help us relate to this plane. However, we do not want to stop at those definitions. We want to be aware of something deeper that underlies all these various definitions. Because without that basis of understanding, we will always keep asking ourselves, why is this happening to me? How did this happen to me? This is unfair. This is unjust. So before we try to get into definitions of our own making, which only get us deeper into judgment and disappointments and unhappiness, we want to raise our awareness of who am I, where am I coming from, and why is this happening to me. The scriptures say that man is made in the image of God. Then we may ask ourselves, if man is made in the image of God, why do we suffer? God does not suffer. He is joyful, he is bliss. Why are we not in bliss? And this is where, friends, one of the fundamental teachings of disease, why does disease exist, comes into play. In the beginning, the essence of our being, our higher self, which we call the soul, was in God. And when it was cast out into creation as an expression of God's joy, we take on an aspect of our individuality which is called the ego. Now, the ego, these are very deep teachings, so I will go slowly, but these form the basis of the system of healing that we are sharing today. Now, the ego is an instrument of that divine light that is within us. However, when we come into this world and we try to relate to this world, you can say we are given the equipment, if we may crudely call it, are our senses. The senses are the gateways in our body through which we relate to the world outside us. It is a bridge between the inner and the outer worlds. So what happens when a child is going away from home and he keeps going farther away? After some time, if he does not keep his awareness about where he is coming from, he very quickly loses his way. And so it happens with man, friends, when we come into creation, we perceive all the things of the world around us through our senses, through our eyes, through our ears, through our sense of touch, and we begin to feel this tangible world as the reality, that this is the final frontier. And we soon begin to forget where we came from, that we came from spirit, and we go back to spirit. We live in spirit, but we forget that. We touch the matter around us and feel this is real, and this is a book, or this is a chair, or this is a table, and matter becomes our solid reality that we relate to. Now, Yogananda ji said, when God uh, created this universe, when God became, rather, let me say, in fact, and the creation is still a misnomer. He became this universe. He became you and me. He said there were stages through which creation went through. The first stage in creation is consciousness. When consciousness begins to vibrate a portion of itself, it becomes a thought. Thought, when given more energy, becomes light. And that energy of light, when given even more vibration, becomes matter. So all matter is consciousness vibrating at certain frequencies, and depending on the frequency it is vibrating at, it takes on the form of a table, of a chair, of you, me, trees, leaves, skies, rivers. It all depends on the consciousness at which we vibrate. However, the unifying factor, so we can all see, is that light of God which is vibrating at different levels. Now, having come from God, like I said, we use the instrument of the ego to play in this world, and soon we forget that our true higher self belongs to God, and therefore the nature of our thoughts, the nature of our actions needs to be harmonious with our soul nature. This is where the friction begins. The ego soon, you can say, usurps the throne. It casts out the soul and takes on the place of the soul. And now the ego begins to dictate. Our likes and dislikes come into play. And soon we are deciding, I want this, I want that, I like this, I don't like this. What has happened? We have enmeshed ourselves in the polarity, in the duality of this world. And wherever there is friction, there is dis-ease. So the soul is wanting to express the divine within us through a particular thought and action. The ego within us is wanting to express our desires through a particular thought and action. And more often than not, the two are not in harmony. The soul is expressing the will of the divine which is within us. The ego is expressing our individuality, which has now been caught in separateness. We see, because we are enmeshed now in the material reality of this world, we are seeing everything as separate. And it is the nature of the ego, the quality, and we take on the divisive qualities of the ego. We don't want to make the ego a demon. It is a friend or a foe depending on how we use it as an instrument. But until our consciousness reaches a place of harmony with the divine, the ego is often an instrument that is used against the divine will. And this constant friction in every thought, we can even take a few moments pause. Think of a thought. Even now, we may want to just look back, probably the last half hour. What were the thoughts in our mind? Let's pause very quickly for a few seconds, 10 seconds. Let's quickly go back to the thoughts in our mind just a half hour ago. What were the nature of that? What was the nature of that thought or the thoughts that we had? Let's gently open our eyes. And I won't ask for answers, but it is for us to reflect. Most of our thoughts would revolve around the thought of I. What would, if you're deciding, if you are planning on Diwali celebrations, it would be the thought of I or the family of 4 or 6 or, the number of members in your family. How often are our thoughts selfless or forgetful of the I? Our thoughts, our actions, our deeds are rooted in I, and there is a selfish motive behind every thought. Every thought is rewarding for us only when it answers the question of what's in it for me. That is the basis on which we choose our jobs. That's the basis on which we choose our partners. That's the basis on which we choose our friendships. That's the basis on which we choose our vacations. That's the basis on which we choose the clothes that we wear in the morning. Which color do I want to wear today? We may even walk into a shop and choose the color. I like blue, or I like pink, or I like white. Well, where are those? Where is that affinity for white or blue or pink or whatever it may, or I like the mountains or I like the sea? Where is that affinity coming from? It's coming from past some scars. It's coming from past likes and dislikes. In the Kali Yuga, sages would not stay for long in one place lest they develop attachments to that place. So, but this is, friends, as we go through the course of our daily life, these little attachments seem very natural. And we wonder, There is no disease here. It's natural to be attached to our family members. It's natural to be attached to my friends. I love them. It's natural to want to possess a house that I have spent years building. We see no disease there. But if we were to step back from this whirlpool of thoughts and actions that we find ourselves in, we see there is a lot of restlessness. There is a lot of lack of ease or disease. Coming back, Yoganandaji would say, disease, he said, perfect health was given by God. Disease is man made. Isn't that interesting? It's when using the power of the ego, the human will, we go away from God, we are naturally moving towards disharmony and disease, towards ill health. And so the primary function of healing, as we see it, the highest function of healing, is harmonizing ourselves with divine will. And that is why the system of healing is called divine will healing. Often even in healing, we impose our own will on the person who needs healing or on our own self. And we say, if there is a rash, let's take the simple example of a rash on our body, and we say, I want this rash to disappear. Well, okay, we go to the doctor, we get a ointment, we apply it, the rash is gone in a week's time, and we get temporary relief. What happens after, say, a few months or maybe after a few years? Well, there's another rash on the body. And Yoganandaji would say that's because we treated that disease or that illness or that symptom at a physical level. Our notion of healing is very often limited to the physical level and then to some degree to the mental level. Very rarely do we approach healing from the perspective of spiritual healing. Yoganandaji said, ignorance, which he said is a spiritual disease, he said, ignorance is the mother of all diseases. As long as you and me live in the ignorance of who we are, he said, we continue to create disease. It is the nature of an apple seed to produce apples. So if we are made in the image of God, it must be in the nature of our thoughts, of our actions, to produce the seeds that are in harmony with divine nature. So when our thoughts and actions are selfish, they are not in tune with our divine nature. And that is why we experience what we call lack of wellness, lack of good health, dis-ease. That is dis-ease. Now, I want to, Yoganandaji uses this analogy. He said, human life is like a house fitted with three windows. And those three windows are the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. And he said, through these windows, God's light is continuously trying to enter man's consciousness. He says, but man, because of his ignorance, has firmly shut all three windows. On the physical level, there are laws of hygiene that we need to follow on this material plane. Otherwise, bacteria invites our body, viruses invade our body, we fall sick. Then on the mental level, we need to remember that as children of God, we are infinite in our potential. Otherwise, he says, there are psychological diseases and things like anger, greed, discontentment, unhappiness. He said these are psychological diseases that come because of a lack of understanding of who we are. A child, when it is in the security of his parents, in the home of his parents, is free from all fears. However, you leave him out on the road, suddenly he's fearful. Where do I go? Who will protect me? And somewhere, friends, because we have forgotten where we came from, we are like orphans in this world, and fear assails us. There are many things to which we will say, I don't know how to do that. And so the moment we feel, I don't know how to do this, there is an element of fear, there is an element of uncertainty that introduces stress and disease. So psychological diseases, Yoganandaji called. Then he said, spiritual disease, which, as I mentioned earlier, he said ignorance, the fact that we have forgotten. Like that story, there is a story that Yoganandaji would share of that prince. When he was sleeping, he dreamt that he was a beggar and he was going around begging food, and nobody is giving him food. And he is anxious. In that anxiety, he wakes up from the bed and he realizes, oh, I'm not a beggar, I am a prince, and this kingdom is mine. And Yoganandaji would say that is our state. We are princes of an infinite, vast, infinite kingdom. But because we have forgotten that, we are dreaming and we feel that we are like beggars in this universe, and we pray to God. We are begging God, please give me this, please don't do this, please help me get a raise in my salary, please protect my child. He said, no, we are children of God. And so, in that true nature of being a child of God, he said, you can make prayer demands of God. Not out of arrogance. We don't want to demand from God out of arrogance, but out of that natural understanding that comes from being a child who asks of his parent, I want this. This is part of my inheritance. Yes, our inheritance, friends, is vast and infinite. And we want to get ourselves more and more in tune with that infinite vastness that lies within us. He would say the outer reflects the inner. This vastness of the universe, sometimes it's paradoxical. On the one hand, when we contemplate this universe outside of us intellectually, we find it so terrifying and we think to ourselves, what use am I in this world? I'm just a tiny speck. And on the other hand, Yoganandaji would say, the entire universe can be intuitively perceived at that at that point of intuitive perception in your heart. That once we realize our oneness with God, we become God, co-creators with God. We become this universe. So we want to trace, as part of our healing journey, we want to retrace our steps. And of course, we take it step by step. But the first notion of healing, that the healing at a physical level is sufficient and we are happy to go back to our old ways of living. No. Let's expand our understanding of healing to include not just the physical, but mental. What does that mean? That if something has manifested itself as a symptom in the body, remember those stages of creation that we went through? From consciousness, vibration of consciousness comes thought, then energy, then matter. So before something finally manifests in the physical world as matter, as some kind of symptom, it was energetically present already in our consciousness, in our body. And even before it manifested itself energetically in our body and in our consciousness, it was present as a thought that was not in tune with a higher consciousness. So we want to, after healing ourselves physically, we want to work on those physical symptoms, heal ourselves, but don't stop the process of healing there. We want to get back to what could have caused this. And often we will quickly go through also a process of meditation, because meditation is a fundamental requirement in Yoganandaji's healing techniques. Why? Because it takes us back to who we truly are. It takes us back to living in the presence of God. And in the presence of God, we can then send out healing to anyone who needs it and practice also healing on ourselves. But most important is to come back to who we are, find that calmness, that peace within our own sense of being, that is our true nature. And then that's where healing begins. So you will often find yourself, friends, on this journey as we experience peace, as we experience calmness. We will see that even the symptoms that we experience or the pain that we experience begins to reduce its influence or impact on our consciousness. Recently, one of our devotees was going through a very intense stage in cancer, and she practiced these teachings of Yoganandaji, and I'll come back to some of the other fundamental concepts. And she said, Blezy, of course, we have to go through that journey of enduring, overcoming. But she said, uh, I found so much encouragement and strength and faith in these practices. He said, I would surrender everything to God. And let's look at the detail at which she surrendered. She said, as soon as I would enter the hospital room for my chemotherapy, I would surrender each and every item in that hospital room to Master, which means the saline, the doctors in the room, the nurses, the chemo treatment, the medicines. She said, each one by one, mentally, as they were getting ready, she said, I prepared myself physically, mentally, and spiritually, and surrendered each one back to God. She said, and when the treatment was on, I would keep myself firmly at this point between the two eyebrows. I'll also come to this point. I would firmly keep my attention, my energy, I would raise it up at this point, and I would mentally keep chanting. And she said the doctors would ask, and she would say, and she said, I kept saying mentally to myself, thank you, Master. She calls Yoganandaji Master because Yoganandaji is a guru. She said, I would keep saying, thank you, Master, thank you, Master, thank you, Master. And at the end of the treatment, the doctors once asked, who is Master? Who is this Master that you're calling to? And they said, we haven't seen a patient like you that even while you're receiving chemo, you're smiling. And later she went on to share, she said that, and she would surrender, even as she would receive chemo treatment, she said, I surrendered every cell of my body. She said, Blezy, and in a vision, I was shown my cells bubbling with light. So we may think this all seems airy fairy, that doesn't seem to be grounding. These are very high teachings, friends, and all that it requires for us to get into that harmonious, to get into tune, to get into harmony with that, with the divine sense of perfection that is already within us. What we need to bridge is exactly this attitude of surrender, willpower, energy that brings us back into tune with our higher nature. Willpower and energy is very important. Why, friends? Because God, in his loving sharing of bliss, of his bliss nature, he gave us independence. He gave us free will. And this free will that we have, friends, has the power, Yoganandaji said, to create galaxies and universes. We may feel ourselves important in terms of, my goodness, I don't feel I can even stand on a stage and give a talk. Sometimes our fears are so basic. But time and again, it's good to go back to reminding ourselves, if this human will through which I'm trying to work in this world is a part of the divine will, all things are possible. All things are possible. And with that conviction of mind and heart, willpower and energy, we want to drive out those psychological diseases of fear, of greed. Where does greed have its starting point? Of insecurity. I won't have enough. Now, we think I won't have enough because we think we are small, we are limited. But when you know as a child of God, again and again the masters have shown how Divine Mother provides for her children more than you and me provide for our earthly children. What we want to do is open our heart to faith. So, willpower. So, this willpower through which, let's do a little experiment sitting upright in our chairs. Let's take our right arm in front of us and let's now vibrate this arm. Okay, we are going to bring willpower. With our will, we are going to draw energy from the universe into this arm. Let's increase that flow of energy. And as you increase the flow of energy, you will feel your arm vibrating. Remember now, this energy that is vibrating your body, it is an aspect of God's energy, power. Let's continue to vibrate, apply more willpower. Let's vibrate it more. We are calm, we are relaxed. This is not a stress point. This sort of tension is simply a concentrated flow of energy to a particular body part. I'm going to vibrate it a little bit more. And now I will slowly, from a high tension to a medium tension to a low tension, I'm going to relax. Let's close our eyes and try to feel the energy around the arm. Let's do it once more. Inhale, tense the arm. Feel the energy flowing into your arm. Vibrate. And now let us relax. I hope we have been able to feel, we can now bring our arm down. I hope we have been able to feel that vibrating tension is nothing but energy. And then after we relaxed the arm, we could, it now sometimes it's difficult, it may be difficult for us to become aware, but there is a very light, warm sensation of energy. That is when energy is relaxed. Let's do this. Let's rub our palms together. Let's rub it briskly 15-20 times, and you will feel, even as you rub your palms, the warm feeling of energy between the palms. And now, very gently separating your palms, you will feel energy between your palms. Try to close your eyes and feel this energy. This, my friends, is a direct healing power of God flowing through your hands. I hope everybody has been able to feel it in some way, through some degree. This is the healing power of God. Now, it's right within you. Yogananda ji said 1 gram of flesh has enough electricity to keep, now he was in America at that time. He said it has enough electricity to keep the city of Chicago lit for without electricity for a week. That's in 1 gram of flesh. So how much have we lost awareness, realization of the light that is shining in every gram of flesh in our body? We want to rouse that energy. And Yogananda ji said, healing is a rousing of that life force within us. Disease is when this life force has become inactive because of wrong living, wrong diet, wrong food at the physical level, wrong thoughts, selfish thoughts on a mental, emotional level, and spiritual level because of lack of practices of meditation, just being in silence and inner communion with our higher self. It is these aspects that lead to illnesses and disease. Now, when we tensed, we felt energy flowing into our body. I want to mention two important points in our body. Let's take our palms and take it down the back of your head, and slowly stretching your head back a little bit, you will come to the base of the brain where there is a hollow. This point is called the medulla oblongata. Right at the base of the brain, there is a little hollow. This is the place, Yogananda ji said, where the medulla oblongata is located, a very delicate part of the body, which it is said, even if touched with a feather, it can lead to instant death. Yogananda ji said, this is the mouth of God through which prana is constantly entering the body. And this point between the eyebrows, we can take our finger, index finger, just we can close our eyes, just feel this point between the eyebrows. This point is called the seat of willpower, the seat of Christ consciousness or Krishna consciousness, the seat of enlightenment. So these two are very important parts of the body, and in healing, we draw energy when we are tensing, when we are projecting energy. We are conscious of this point in our body, which is a medulla, through which energy is entering the body. And sometimes in certain practices, which we won't have time to do today, through this point, we broadcast also that healing energy. But let's come back more to this point, the medulla oblongata. Yogananda ji said we are surrounded by a sea of cosmic energy, and that energy is entering through this point into the body. Now, as long as this energy is entering, prana as we call it, is entering our body, he said our willpower converts this cosmic energy which is around us. As it enters the body, it is our willpower which converts it into life force. And as long as life force is active in our body, we are alive. But when life force leaves the body, we have passed on. And then no amount of food, no amount of oxygen, no amount of water can revive a dead person. So you see, the direct healing agent is prana and life force in the body. When we take medicines, medicinal herbs and massages, mind power, everything works on life force. They are all indirect sources of healing. But if we can activate this life force, and there are many tools and techniques Yogananda ji has given, even this little exercise that we did today of just tensing, relaxing the arm, tensing, relaxing the arm. This is a very potent healing method, and we can do this on any part of your body. If some part of your body is aching, you can focus your attention on that part of the body, tense and relax. Tense and relax. What is the element of tension and relax? Tensing, remember, here is concentrating your forces. So when I'm saying tense, you're going to physically be aware of that body part. You tense with attention. You'll put all the attention of your mind there. And spiritually, you draw the light at that point. Visualize, imagine light present in that part of your body. And then you tense and you relax into that light. Tense again, drawing more energy from the cosmos around you into that part. And as you relax, visualize that pain dissolving in the light. This is one of the healing teachings. So as we tense and relax, what we are actually doing is we are increasing our willpower. The greater the will, the greater the flow of energy. And we are talking about God's healing energy here. So our willpower, Yogananda ji said, the more our willpower is active, the more it can draw energy from the universe. And it's very important also to remember this next point, that the willingness with which you draw this power is very important. So it cannot be that I have to do this, so I will do it. No, you want to do it with joy, you want to do it with love, you want to do it with positive attitude. He said, what you do with positive thoughts and attitude, you draw much more prana, cosmic energy into your body, into your mind, into your spirit, when we do so with a strong, joyful, cheerful attitude. This is very important in healing. And Yogananda ji said, in fact, a smile, a joyful smile, he said, keeps the bacteria of negative thoughts away. And he says, when we do something with a cheerful, willing attitude, he said it keeps the blood charged with life force. Isn't this amazing? I mean, it's as simple as this. Sometimes the weakness of our thought is we think, oh, this is too simple. And there you have lost the power of the teaching. You see, but God is simple, man makes it complex. So simply with joyful attitude, if you just tense and relax the body, you have drawn in prana. And he said, this light of God, this prana is intelligent. It knows what to heal in your body. You don't have to define that healing. You know, once a girl who was very, she had some talents and gifts in healing, and her father was not, though, a very didn't live a very good life, and he used to drink. He was an alcoholic. He used to drink a lot, and he was very unwell. And everybody wanted now this girl, who was his daughter, to pray for him. And they knew that she had the power to bring him out of his illness, out of his ill health. And she kept saying, no, it's not right for me to pray for him. I can't pray for him to be well. But, they finally convinced her, weighed on her to, emotionally kind of, you call it emotional blackmail, emotionally kind of influenced and persuaded her to kind of pray for the father. She prayed for the father, and the father became well. Well, what happened next? He went back to his old ways. He was good for a little while, but he went back to his old ways, and he became worse. So this is what happens, friends. Because we don't have the wisdom to know what is good, we want to surrender to the divine will. Whatever God wants, whatever the divine will wants, let that flow through. All we need to do is to prepare ourselves as instruments for that power, that light which is within us. We need to awaken that power, that light, though, through prayer, through meditation. And once we have awakened that power and that light in meditation, then I'll share a simple healing technique I'll share today. We simply become instruments for sharing that light with yourself or with others. And Yogananda ji said, one more thing I'll say about this healing light. When we project this healing light, when we are sending healing energy to somebody else, he said this healing light has infinite power of projection. It is not limited by geography, time, space, which means it can even be shared with someone who has passed on. It can be shared on habits and tendencies that are deeply set as grooves in our brain. Now, it depends on how chronic something which may be in our consciousness. The more chronic something is, the more you have to practice the the techniques. Day after day, maybe for a few weeks, maybe for a few months, maybe sometimes for a whole year. It all depends on how strong is something that you're trying to heal. But very important principles to know. The light knows what to heal, and it has infinite power of projection. All we need to do is simply become instruments for that light which is trying to flow through us. So now, very quickly, I will share a very simple practice of meditation, and then I will share a practice of how we can send healing to others and to ourselves. Okay, so let us sit up straight. We'll keep our spine upright. If you're sitting on a chair, let's sit away from the back of the chair. We will keep our palms upturned in receptive mode. We can rest it on our thighs or at the junction of the thighs and the abdomen. Keep the neck long. We don't want to jackknife our neck backwards, or neither do we want our neck to fall forward. Let's keep the neck long. And now we will lift our eyes, our gaze behind closed eyes at that point between the eyebrows. We can take our index finger of the right hand, let's touch that point between the two eyebrows, and let's turn the inward gaze at this point even as we keep our eyes closed. Let's be aware of this point as we practice this meditation and the healing technique to follow. And now we can bring our hands down. Let's focus at that point between the eyebrows. Let's now bring our attention to the breath. As you inhale, take a long, deep inhalation. Let the diaphragm expand, the rib cage open, and the chest. And as we exhale, feel that relaxation in the chest and the rib cage in the abdomen. Let's take a couple of breaths, deep breaths, in this manner. And now we will allow the breath to flow naturally at its own pace. We will simply watch the breath, continuing to keep our gaze at the point between the eyebrows, keeping our body relaxed. Let's calmly watch the breath as we inhale, as we exhale. If you find thoughts intruding, gently but firmly bring your attention back to the breath each time the mind wanders. And now bring to your mind at this point between the eyebrows anyone you know who is in need of healing. Visualize that person at that point and see that person surrounded in the light. See the person smiling, joyful. Feel your own heart's joy and blessings. Bless and strengthen the person. And continuing to hold that person in the light, we will now say a prayer, which you can say either loudly or mentally. We will invoke the divine blessings and power of Divine Mother. The words to this prayer are Divine Mother, thou art omnipresent. Thou art in all thy children. Thou art in, and you can mentally say the name of the person you are seeking healing for. Manifest thy healing presence in his or her body, mind, and soul. Let us now briskly rub our palms together as we did earlier. Remember that we just learned how energy flows in from the medulla to your palms. As you rub your palms, feel that energy, the light gathering in the palm of your hands, the light of God that knows what to heal, no matter where the person is. And now lifting our palms up, projecting that light out with your willpower, feel that energy going out of your hands to bless and heal that person. We'll chant Om 3 times. Let your hands continue to stay up. You'll feel the energy flowing out of your palms. When that energy stabilizes and you feel the healing energy has gone out to the person, we can bring our palms down. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Let's gently open our eyes. I want to quickly, it's already close to 1 hour, I want to quickly elaborate on some of the aspects of this very simple healing technique that we just learned. The prayer which said, Divine Mother, thou art omnipresent. That when we say these words, we want to be in those words without any doubt. Or even as Yogananda ji would say, send the healing energy, do not doubt. He said, cure and forget. He said, don't, after you just planted a young sapling in the ground, he said, don't keep digging it up to see, is it growing, is it growing? He said, no. So likewise, once you send healing, know that that healing energy that has gone out of your hands has affected healing in the person. Now, the healing may be in different forms. It may be, often I have heard, we have something, what we did in the tensing of the arms, it's part of a system of healing called energization exercises. And very often I've heard people, even as they do the energization exercises, they'll say, oh, I had shoulder pain and it is gone. Or somebody has back pain and it is gone. And so you see, because when you draw prana into your body, the prana simply knows what to heal and it just happens very quietly. And likewise, when we are sending this healing energy out to the palms, it's going with the understanding, Divine Mother, thou art omnipresent, thou art already in all your children. So, what are we doing when we're doing this? We are rousing that healing life force which is dormant in that person or inactive in that person who is going through that ill health. And this energy is trying to rouse that energy, rouse that inactive life force in the person. So it works, it is effective. We should not doubt or we should not fall to lack of faith. So, Divine Mother, thou art omnipresent, thou art in all thy children. And now, when we say, then thou art in this person, we are focusing that healing energy on that person. Manifest thy healing presence in body, mind, and soul. It's important to allow that healing to happen at different levels. Often, the healing power takes place on a psychological level. Something the person may have been very anxious about, that anxiety is gone. Or the pain may still be there, but the person has found inner strength now to endure it, or has found the courage to overcome it. Now, these are deeper healings, friends. So these are some of the notions we want to train our understanding in, that when in this world of duality, the material, all things material will perish. What's important, as I said in the beginning of the class, is the consciousness needs to rise above the material uh, expressions of it, which means even if you are in pain, can you still find that inner strength to be calm, peaceful, joyful? Now that's healing of a very high order. And when you're joyful despite the most challenging circumstances, then God's power is right there within you, and you cease to be troubled or disturbed. So when we are happy, there is good health. But Saint Francis, towards the end of his life, he was in severe pain. He couldn't see, and yet people would touch the hem of his robes and they would be healed. So, friends, healing is the ability to keep our consciousness above pain. As I say, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. So, these are higher understandings that we now want to bring into our daily notions about healing and to start raising our own consciousness towards exploring hidden vistas in our healing journey and to take it beyond the physical level to explore also the mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of it. So, this is just a minuscule aspect of the teachings I've touched, friends. I can take each of these, the power of thoughts, the power of affirmations, the power of prayer, and then there are very specific techniques Yogananda ji has given on how to bring light up to this point and then focus that light on to somebody who needs healing. And then there's also the healing practice of chanting Om in a diseased body part that also brings about healing. It's a vast system of teachings, and I hope you take up this adventure of finding the infinite potential of God's light that is within you to heal yourself and others. I'll pause here right now and invite any questions that you may have in what has been shared.